Welcome to Russell Jones Speaks, where we explore big issues that matter to parents, grandparents, and kids. We tackle intergenerational issues. Everything that affects parents, grands, and children is on the table. That includes health and fitness, relationships, attitude, family unity, vision, adversity, God, and anything else that might arise. The goal is for you to take away something that you can use in your life immediately. I really want to help improve the lives of families, especially those with 10 to 13-year-old middle schoolers. Let's talk. Go to russelljonespeaks.com to get an amazing gift and then jump on a call with me. Hey, everybody. Peter Hubbard has been serving as the teaching pastor at North Hills Church since 1992. He's married to Karen, and they have 4 adult children, 2 daughters-in-law, and 3 grands. He has 2 master's degrees and has earned a Doctor of Ministry degree in pastoral counseling from Westminster Theological Seminary. God's purpose and grace continue to energize Peter to preach through the Scriptures, listening carefully to what God says and how His Spirit applies His Word to the hidden, hurting places in our hearts. He loves to see the transforming power of the gospel shine into the darkest, most difficult struggles. For fun, Peter might read, write, play games, take long walks with Karen, and endure persecution for cheering for the Patriots. Totally understandable. Welcome, Pastor. How are you today?
Great. Good to be with you, Russell.
So, I'm just excited about this. I just want to give everybody a heads up that we're coming up on 4 years living in Travelers Rest, South Carolina. Before that, it was 67 years in New Jersey. And coming to the Bible Belt, not knowing anyone within probably 200 miles of this area. Peter was like the second person that I met. When we were leaving, when the people that lived here were leaving, they mentioned a few of the neighbors and they said, "Oh, there's a pastor out back." That was their words. And so I said, "Well, it's the Bible Belt. I'm sure we're going to be meeting a lot of pastors and we're going to be going to a lot of churches, trying to find a home." And so eventually I went over and I met Peter and we spoke for at least a half an hour. Peter told me about all the awesome churches in this area. I mean, in detail. And I was saying, that's great. I was encouraged. I was, great meeting my neighbor and everything. And I came back and my wife said to me, "Well, where's the pastor? Where's his church?" I said, "Gee, I don't know. He never mentioned it." So, she said, "Well, that's kind of suspicious." I said, "Well, I don't know. Maybe he sized me up and figured he doesn't need any more people at his church. I don't know." But anyway, with the New Jersey, I don't know, distrust of just about everything, we figured we'd stalk this neighbor of ours, and we went to his church, and we haven't been anywhere else since. Peter's an awesome, awesome teacher of the Word and awesome neighbor too. But anyway, I'm just really happy that we're getting together today, and the takeaways should be great. So, all right. So, Peter, okay, we got the Patriots thing out of the way. Now give us your story. I know growing up in Massachusetts, and not a religious family, though, right?
Yeah, my parents were moral, good people. We periodically went to church at a congregational church that really didn't believe the Bible was true. We didn't believe Jesus rose from the dead or any of the other miracles. My life at the time was ice hockey, played all the time. And at one of my games, my mother was in the stands just chatting with a lady next to her about a horse ranch in Canada where they trained hockey players, professional hockey players in the summer, worked there, and they also had horses. So she decided I needed to go. But I was excited about it, but had no idea that this was a Christian horse ranch and that they had chapel. And when I found out about that, I was not happy. But halfway through the week, heard the gospel really for the first time, that Jesus died for me. He defeated sin and death, rose from the grave, and the Lord changed my life. And shortly after that, my sister came to Christ. A couple years later, my mother, then my father, then tons of brothers and sisters. So we are just stunned at the miracle of God's grace.
So, did it make you a better hockey player?
No, ended my professional career, which was non-existent. I am not built as a hockey player, but I loved to play. And played for a few more years and then decided to become a running back in the NFL. No.
So that's what happened to the Patriots.
That's it.
So, okay, so that changes your life. So it changes, just sounds up, changed family life. So where were you in school at the time when that happened? What grade?
I was going to a school, just a big public school in my town, Masconomet Regional High School, and middle school and high school. And I did not, at first, I didn't know anyone else who was a Christian. But each summer I would go back to the ranch, learn more, grow, come back, terrorize my community by sharing the gospel with everyone I knew. And slowly got to know believers. Eventually, the latter part of high school, went to a boarding Christian school in New Hampshire. And that's really where I got grounded, got called into the ministry, which is another story. And my life totally changed.
So, okay, so give us that, like that call, obviously you were, fired up about sharing the gospel, and how did that look when you finally got that sense that, okay, I'm not going to have, maybe a career that I thought of before. I'm not going to, proceed the normal channels. I'm going to flow in the Spirit.
It was so unlike me, because growing up I was hyperactive. They field tested Ritalin on me before it was a thing. I was diagnosed ADD, and I was just so non-academic, not sit still, not focus. And so when the Lord gave me a love for his word in high school, which is insane, I would wake up early, read the Bible every morning, got commentaries, started to devour what does this mean, and began sharing it with classmates, and eventually had opportunities to teach the little that I knew, which is scary. But it was during that time where the Spirit just impressed me. I want you to do this the rest of your life. My family, especially my grandfather, thought I was insane. Like, you're wasting your parents' investment in you to become a minister, because all he knew were like liberal ministers who drank all week and delivered a homily on Sunday. And I said, this is very different from that. And so it was really those high school latter part of the high school years, had opportunities to go on mission trips, and God just gave me a hunger for his word and to share it with anybody I could share it with. And that's never changed in 40, 50 years.
Interesting. So, all right, so you're up in New England, and you got to travel a bit with missions and things like that. But now, how do you end up down here in South Carolina. That's a big leap, right? From Massachusetts to South Carolina.
Big leap. Yeah, my wife and I met here, and then I was a youth pastor in Chicago for a number of years. And then it was during those years that our marriage fell apart. We were still married, but I just was a doofus and was kind of addicted to ministry, gone all the time. She began to experience panic attacks and depression. We had our first child that helped propel that. And it was during that time that God really showed me you can't go out and minister to everyone else and neglect the person that you're in covenant with. And he began to humble me and show me what love looks like, not just out there, but in here and to the ones closest to me. And God really began to heal our marriage, heal Karen through this incredibly horrible experience of she was in panic attacks for several years, like not just episodic, but ongoing. And it was during that time I wanted to get more schooling. And I thought if I just go somewhere where we don't know anyone, she's going to be dying. So felt led to come back here, do more schooling, would drive every week up to Charlotte, and God began to heal our marriage. And it was during that time I was running a painting business that a group of families that were gathering that would become North Hills Church 34 years ago. And that's how the church was planted. And we began pastoring there. So it was a real time of transformation for our marriage and launching into this, what has become a lifelong ministry.
Yeah, so wait, I missed a jump there. You met Karen up in Massachusetts, or you met her down here?
No, down here in school. And then,
But I was saying, like, how did you end up going to school in South Carolina?
oh, I had a coach, a soccer coach, who went to school down here and said, if you're going to train for the ministry, go there. And so I came down here, and that's where I met Karen, did a bachelor's and master's here, and then was a youth pastor up in Chicago, and then came back
Gotcha.
to get, because her family was here. We knew some people who had gone through similar things that she went through. And so we felt like we could get help.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So it just started with a few families, North Hills Church. You weren't given a huge building with stained glass windows, and you weren't just given the job, right?
Oh yeah. No, there was no package. No,
Okay.
we were, they were, the original families met in a home for a few months praying about, is God in this? And then they rented a foot doctor's upstairs. The foot doctor's office was downstairs. The doctor had this upstairs space that used to be a church. And so we rented that. And that's when I started speaking just to fill in. And then God just knit our hearts together and made it clear we need to formally form as a church. We had not done that. And then we need to get biblical leaders. And we were off and running. So I was working full time and going to school and pastoring at first. And that was a little insane.
It sounds like it.
But I was young and foolish.
And had more energy, but you have a lot of energy
Yes.
still. But so all right, so let's take this to contemporary culture. What's going on in America today? Um, I'm looking, at the news and listening and the election and all that's going on. I'm listening to the quote unquote influencers in our culture, the Jordan Petersons, Tucker Carlsons, Elon Musks, Russell Brand, Kennedy Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, Joe Rogan and his UFOs, all these different people are talking. But there's a thread going through it right now that I I don't know. I'm startled by, not in a bad way, but just startled. Like all of a sudden, it seems like within the last like 9 months or so, everybody's like expressing their Christianity, their belief in God,
Mm-hmm.
and it just seems like the culture's gone one way. Is it even going to be able to go back the other way? But so I guess the big question is: are Americans on the road back to common sense, traditional values, and faith?
Great question.
In
I
your
would say
opinion?
yes and no. Yes and no. Yes, like you see this, for example, a surge in Bible sales this year, 22% increase, and many other indications. There's a hunger for with people for something they can trust. Everything seems to be moving. Uh, Everything, loss of trust in many institutions. That's obvious, but people want to hold on to something, and so I think there is a desire for what is ultimate. And religion, a good definition of religion is it's what's beneath everything else. Like what's holding up everything else, and people want to get to that. But I say yes and no because on the other side, there is this surge in skepticism, and like our schools are still pumping out a level of cynicism that is unprecedented. So depending on what world you're in, it's just a widening. And when you have online optimization where you can enter into a black hole of one or the other, that's where I think it's almost impossible to say universally yes or universally no. It's yes and no. But on a practical level, I keep meeting more and more people, young people, who just show up at church and want to know, what is this all about? So I do think it's a great time to be a follower of Jesus.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I just, I think sometimes the hope is so that we can have something really to pass on, something of value to pass on to our children and our grandchildren, and but sometimes we get a little carried away with like, oh, everything's going to be fixed,
Yeah,
everything's going to be really good, everything now we're really going to, the world is really going to see what Christianity's all about. But this is it's still earth, it's still humans living, right? It's not it's a sinful fallen world, no matter how, how no matter how good it seems like it's going to get.
yeah, definitely. And you saw some of the same thing happen, like 9/11, the surge of religious openness. And then within a few years, you see it fading. And so as a follower of Jesus and as a pastor, our desire is to help people pursue Christ, to experience deep rooted happiness, not just a transient, yeah, the economy's better, our guy wins, we got some good election result, whatever it is, but a deep rooted happiness that sets us up for long term flourishing, eternal flourishing.
Yeah. Yeah, the interesting thing too is that it sounded like it, listening to the reports of these last so many months, that young men seem to be more hungry for the traditional shift back to, hungry for, seeking something, greater than themselves. Um, but it seems like there's a battle that there's young men and young women. It's not like an evil, it's not evenly matched. It's almost, and, I don't want to make it a sexist discussion, but it's kind of like what's going on with the young women today. And, so anyway, I don't know if you've experienced that. Are the new people coming in? I see new people coming in, and I can't tell if there's more guys coming than girls coming, women coming. Are you seeing a difference in that, or is this just something that the media is pumping up?
Yeah, that's hard to say because I see a hunger among both. But I would say more than ever that I can remember, like young males tend to be more conservative than young females, which is unusual. And part of that are the influencers you've described. And part of that is, being male has, come under hard times for a number of years where men have kind of lost their way, and the culture has at times assumed if you're male, you're toxic. And so it's given, I think, young men a desire to know, what does it really mean to be a man, not a predator, not a victim, but a real man made in the image of God. Like, and what does that mean for the way I live? And so I do think that is a fascinating trend, the conservative movement of young men and the opposite of young females. But I do think some of that is regional and not necessarily national. But I could be wrong there.
The Yeah, and I think too that the social media, and I guess you don't see it face to face, but one of the down sides of this whole uh, conversations that go on, they're not conversations anymore. I call it like the scream culture. Like
Yeah.
people just, I don't know where civility went. And I didn't know if it started in my generation. I don't know, the baby boomers. Did we just get so disrespectful to maybe what went before us? We wanted to change everything. We wanted to do the Woodstock thing, and uh, but the scream culture just has me. It just like, how can we talk? But I don't know that it's really like that though when you actually sit down with people face to face. What's your experience with that?
Yeah, I would say online is a different culture than face to face, because having a real debate online so often degenerates, not always, but often. But I find when you sit face to face with people who differ, and you really want to listen to one another, it's still possible. But I do think you're right. There's a strong cancel culture on the far right and the far left that really doesn't want to listen to either. And I think as Christians, we got to push against that, because we can't dehumanize. That doesn't mean we compromise. It doesn't mean we just go along with anything, but it does mean, like Paul wrote in Titus, showing perfect courtesy toward all people is huge. Even while we stand for truth, even while we have vigorous debates. My middle son was a political science major, and the university where he went, and this is shocking because it's very progressive, but he had a political science teacher who they would debate issues, and he required them to use Mr. and Miss when referring to someone, and their last name, and had to speak respectfully. And it was like another world. My son loved it because they could have these rigorous debates in class, but they had to show respect. They had to speak respectfully to one another. They couldn't dehumanize each other. They couldn't just ad hominem. They had to debate the issues. That's rare.
Yeah, that is rare, but it's awesome when it comes about.
Yeah.
That's very cool. So, so the state of the family, and there's no judgment here. I mean, there's blended families, mixed families, broken families, single parent families. There's all these derivations, which seem to be more prevalent in these times than ever before. Does the church, how's the church dealing with the challenges that folks like that have and kids like that have? I mean, is it just like, hey, we all have stuff and, we all got to work through our stuff?
Yeah, great question. As our culture has moved more and more away from Christian assumptions, let's say, it has had devastating impact on marriage and family. And the kids are the ones who pay the biggest price. As believers, I think of it kind of like the first time I was speaking in Africa 30 years ago. I opened it up for questions. And the first question I got from one of the pastors was, what do you do when a man gets saved and has several wives? And if he divorces any of these wives, they're just going to die because they're not going to have anyone to take care of them. But if he keeps multiple wives, then he can't serve in leadership. What do you do? And I'm thinking, I haven't got that question yet. But it illustrates what has been normal throughout church history. And that is when the gospel penetrates a culture that is not predominantly shaped by Christian values, we're going to encounter a lot of challenges. Like, people are going to come into a relationship with Jesus with a lot of baggage, a lot of messiness, like a man who gets saved and is married to another man, and perhaps has adopted children. Like, what does that mean? How does the gospel shape the way he thinks about marriage and family when his own experience has been the opposite? And for many of us today, especially many in the so-called Bible Belt, that is a bit shocking. But for Christians throughout church history, that's not unusual at all. Like, the Christians in Rome encountered all these variations, sexual variations, and moral, marital, family. And then just, you see through the scriptures, the gospel shaping and reshaping the way they think about marriage and work and kids. And so I think we have to patiently respond, full of grace and full of truth, meaning we're not going to compromise, but we're going to meet people where they are and patiently loving them, whether they've been through a shattered marriage or, like one lady who was saved out of lesbianism, and she walked into our church and she said, I didn't understand a thing that was happening. And so one of the ladies in our church said, hey, let's get lunch after every service and we'll talk through what happened and what it means and what we learned. And this lady grew spiritually because she had someone full of grace, full of truth, walking through, what does this mean for your life? How do we live this out? Patiently, struggling, failing, learning, growing, changing. I think that's the model we're called to.
Yeah. Good model. All right. So the local church, you mentioned the word before, you talked about trust. And, I have experience from my younger days when trust was broken. I felt, again, it could have been just me, but maybe because there was no ongoing conversations with somebody taking me to lunch, a lot of distrust of the church occurred. And I think then, later on in life, becoming a Christian for me, um, that kind of has cropped up in periodically, uh, like what's going on, you can be skeptical about anything in life, but sometimes you just go off the deep end with it. But like, what's like the state of the church in America right now? Is the perception, it's just a place we run to when there's a national tragedy, or is it, is the church growing? Or are people just moving around?
Whew, another great question. Yes and no, because
Sorry.
the non-denominational churches that are healthy and teaching God's word are growing. Some of the mainline denominations are shrinking significantly. Many of the older denominations are shrinking. So there's kind of an institutional rejection, but at the same time, there is this craving for community and truth. And so that's where you see this yes and no thing going on, because like one of the things COVID did is whatever something was, it is more of that now. Like it killed some churches that were really struggling, going into it. And other churches that were healthy going into COVID are way more healthy, stronger. So it had this weeding out effect, and there are a lot of reasons for that. But I think that illustrates the condition of churches, because I keep hearing churches, and I know of churches that are struggling and barely surviving, but then I could name a ton of churches that are exploding, and in a good way, like growing, and not just numerically, but in health and spiritually. And so I do think overall there is a weeding out of nominal Christianity, because in many parts of the country you either believe or not, and there's a price to pay. And I don't know that that's a bad thing. It's a good thing. Like Christ called us, take up our cross and follow.
Yeah. All right. So now we come to North Hills Church in Taylor, South Carolina. Now I consider it, after all the churches we've attended over the years and served in and everything else, I consider it the perfect church. However, I do realize that once I got there, it wasn't perfect anymore. But
I didn't want to say that.
But I knew you were thinking it.
Yes.
But
it was absolutely perfect. We worked so hard to get it perfect. And then you came from New Jersey.
Can you believe it? They sent me directly here. But I think just looking at at our church and all the different things that we're into, from the missions to the Miracle Hill ladies to uh, all the counseling and the youth and the children and the adult class, the guest speakers, the men's group, the women's group, the seniors group, all the things that we're involved in and doing. What even our healthy uh, Kirsten running a healthy kitchen in our church. I mean, a healthy kitchen is an oxymoron when it comes to big established things, but it's awesome. So here we are. But like, do we have any gaps that you're aware of? Like that you're saying, gee, I wish we could be jump further into another area that we're not into yet, or is it just like a continual like moving forward in all the areas that we're in?
Oh, having having been here since the beginning, I feel like maybe too much. I see the areas I long for us to grow in and to become better at. And so I think I genuinely, I'm filled with gratitude for all the Lord has done and is allowing us to do. But I feel like we've just scratched the surface. Like there is one example. We're working on a more intentional discipleship model to help, especially new believers and newcomers, really get rooted and grounded in what does it mean to believe God's word, connect with his family, and share his story. And so that's one example. There are, like, we want to help our business men and women and people in the medical world or wherever, like, reach out to their coworkers, people, like, minister in whatever avenue or area of vocation God has put us in. So I feel like those are just a couple of many areas where we're also praying about what does that look like in, like, counseling kind of ministries to the community. Can we provide more like marriage counseling for the community at large? We have that a lot for our people, but as you said, marriages and families are taking a big hit. So can we do more there? We're praying about that. And a lot of ministries, you mentioned Miracle Hill, some of your people may not know what that is, but like we have partnerships with ministries like Miracle Hill who have, residential drug and alcohol programs, biblically based, and we get to partner with them. So we're saying, rather than start some of those things, let's help reinforce, strengthen, partner, support what's happening in our community. So we'll continue to do more and more of that.
Connect. Yeah. Okay. All right. A scenario for you. And it came about because I'm going back, social media again. I'm Facebook friends with people from literally 60 years ago, 50 years ago, that I haven't seen since, but we're quote unquote friends. And I don't even know how like the image of what I was like. I saw them the last time was in seventh grade. Um, oh yeah, I know Russell, but uh, I noticed that in listening to people, push come to shove, they'll say that they're a Christian, or they'll name a denomination of Christianity, or they'll be a believer, they'll be uh, belong to some religion. But in my mind, it's in listening to them or seeing how the things that they put up there, it's almost like they're like half believers. Like, how do you talk to a half believer that had some education, maybe some, traditional education and Christianity, and went, their parents dragged them to church, they went to Sunday school, and but at some point, they rebelled against that, they walked away from that, and but so they feel that they know all about it. I've been there. I did that. That it doesn't really work. It sounds good, but it doesn't really work. Or maybe they're even atheists at this point. I know what gets me is like, how do you witness to somebody like that? Like, C.S. Lewis, and I'm obviously a huge C.S. Lewis fan. Christianity, is, if false, is of no importance, and if true, of infinite importance. The only thing it cannot be is moderately important. And Tozer said, Christianity has been watered down until the solution is so weak that if it were poison, it would not hurt anyone, and if it were medicine, it would not cure anyone. So, speak to that. If there's any, uh, how would you address somebody? How would you raise the urgency bar for them to make a decision one way or the other instead of being somewhere in the middle?
A lot of it depends on the nature of our relationship. So if it's online and I only, interact with them periodically through social media, that's going to be one thing. If I'm in person gathering with them, at times I may take a different approach. But essentially, I would want to share some of the things God is doing in my life, ways He continues to change me. And that often opens up a door to talk about, like, what is God doing in your life? And there are times when people realize, well, I don't think He's doing anything in my life. Like, salvation is like a ticket I took, a box I checked 30 years ago or 40 years ago. And that, unfortunately, as you said, that is super common. I grew up like periodically going to church and not believing a thing. And that kind of nominal Christianity is extremely, um, sleep inducing. You don't even realize what you don't realize. So through sharing what God is doing, and then if you have a close enough relationship to actually share the truth of Scripture, um, that like, what does it really mean that we are saved by grace, but then we're saved as His workmanship unto good works? Like, He actually begins training us, changing us. Or Titus 2, that the grace that saves is the grace that trains us, transforms us. So for many people, they've just heard a message, like they went to a Billy Graham crusade, 40 years, 50 years ago. They may have prayed a prayer, but they've never been discipled. They're never, like, they don't see it as an ongoing training, transforming, growing relationship. So I do think we need to cast that vision before people that this is an ongoing relationship. It's not punctiliar in the sense of a moment of time that I prayed a prayer and now I'm good to go. It's an ongoing relationship. But that is, and that's everywhere. Like, I remember my kids' first time coming home from going to the local public school. The thing that shocked them most in South Carolina was not, the garbage, the sex and the drugs or whatever else that kids dabbled with in high school that they expected, but it was that many still claimed to be Christians. and did those things. That's the part where it's like, what? So I do think that that's, again, nothing new. That's always been a challenge, is to call people, like, if we're going to claim to be followers of Jesus, let's follow Jesus.
Yep. All right. So you mentioned marriage before. I saw an interview with you and your wife. I don't know how long ago it was done. And in it, you said something about not the fix it guy. And I understood it as a traditional guy, or somewhat traditional guy. Uh, with great pride, if I can fix something, like if I can fix anything, if I can fix a flat tire, if I can do anything, it's just a sense of accomplishment. Not envy, but I so appreciate skilled tradesmen, craftsmen and
Yeah.
stuff. But fixing something gives great pleasure. So, and my wife, we've been married over 40 years, and she'll ask, come to me with this situation, and I'll, between the two of us, we'll try to figure it out, and I'll try to fix it. If I got to do some research or counsel with somebody, I'll try to fix it. So that's I'm guessing it's in our nature as guys. Provide and protect somehow falls under that. And but you talked about, and I learned this though later on when throughout, not having a great example of it in my home life, when your wife comes to you really, really upset about something, and you try to start to fix it, and you realize that that's not going anywhere. Uh, and and then someone wise once said, "Will you just give her a hug and hold her, and don't say anything?" Which is hard to do when you want to fix something, right? But I was able to master that. But in that talk with session with your wife, you mentioned at a desperate time where you realized that it was time to pray over my wife. Can you explain like what that looks like? Like, I pray for my wife, I pray with my wife, I pray all around my wife. But what does that look like, praying over your wife?
So when our marriage, this experience occurred in Chicago, hit rock bottom, she looked at me a couple different times and said, "I hate you. I wish I never married you." I wasn't super bright, but I realized we have a problem. This is not going the way. And I already at the time I had some counseling training. So, and like, I felt like my parents didn't have a perfect marriage, but they had a decent one. So I thought, I can fix this up till that point, because that's when I realized my wife doesn't trust me at all. She doesn't want to hear me, because anything I would say, it came across very defensive, very pontificating. And so she really, at that point, really shut down. And so I went to the Lord and said, "Lord, what am I supposed to do? Because I'm supposed to love my wife, but she really doesn't want anything to do with me at this point." And I felt like he gave me this one thing I could do, like, and that was pray in a specific way for her, because she would allow me to give her like a shoulder rub, or a foot rub. Like, that was it. And so said, okay, we'll work with that. And as I prayed for her and, especially giving thanks for her, and even at times asking forgiveness for just the unhelpful things I had done, the Lord, and I'm fast forwarding, but over time, he began to soften her heart and to open my eyes. So I'm not saying it's some kind of quick fix, but I still think there's something about when a husband in a non-sexual way is, either like rubbing your wife's shoulders and talking to God on behalf of your wife, communicating love through that prayer, not an imprecatory prayer, but a pleading for her. And it began to mean the world to my wife. And so I still do it
Were you
today.
praying out loud during this, or is this
Yeah.
something? Yes, out loud. Okay.
Yeah. Out loud.
Because I don't know what
Sometimes it was
imprecatory
just
means.
imprecatory is, when you read the Psalms and they say, smite him hip and thigh, it's,
Okay.
yeah, it's not that kind of prayer.
Gotcha.
It's not using prayer as a means of trying to show you, like, help her see the wrong she's done, but just loving, because Ephesians 5 describes the love of the husband like the love of Christ as a cleansing, sanctifying love. So it's washing away anxiety, bitterness, fear, tension. And when, especially in a relationship where you're having trouble communicating, that was helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. All right. So while we're on the subject of your wife, she's been going through a serious health battle the last couple of years. Um, and, we look over and we check in and offer any kind of support we can. Although whenever we see her, she looks perfectly fine. Can just run us through. Now we know about health crisis happens. We know about getting to the best doctors. We know, and I'm sure with your network, within our church and connections, getting the best possible care, insights, opinions, um, tests, everything. But there's the day to day. There's the reality of the flesh. There's fear. There's uh, exhaustion. There's confusion. There's wondering. Just don't have to go through every minute, but can you just run us through, like, you two are the most optimistic, smiley people that I know, in a good way. Not in a weird way. So talk us through that a little
Thank
bit,
you
can you,
for
Pastor?
clarifying.
I'm sorry, but I know it's a serious question. I don't want to make light of it at all. But
Yeah, 3.5 years ago, she went in for what was to be just a normal surgery to remove what they call a fibroid. Most women have them at some point. 99% plus are benign and they're nothing. But for her, they dropped the bomb and said, you are the 0.00 whatever percentage, and you have what's LMS, which is a rare aggressive cancer that will kill you. At the time, they said you have about 18 months. And for a woman, as I shared earlier, who had gone through panic attacks and depression, you can imagine this is a perfect storm. But it's been stunning to watch the grace of God, because she she said, even right in the hospital, went right after finding out, and we cried and prayed, and she said, nothing's changed. Like, God's still in charge. He still knows the number of our days. His love is strong through Jesus. We're going to run there. And we did together. And that was 3.5 years ago. So she's done remarkably well. Like, she's been through 8 surgeries and lots of other treatments. And yet we've traveled around the world and been able to do so many things, even in the midst of the treatment. And that is just the grace of God. So currently she has a lot of tumors in her abdomen, a few in her lungs, and we don't know for sure what's next, but the Lord has led us step by step. We're confident he will continue to lead us. And she just blows me away at the grace God is giving her. The Lord made clear right at the beginning, I'm calling you down an uncertain road to be absolutely certain in me. And that those two ideas have been traveling together. Like, we don't know exactly what's next, but we have this rock solid certainty in him. Philippians 4, rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say rejoice, let your reasonableness be known to everyone. The Lord is at hand. The Lord is at hand. And so we're not going to be anxious about anything, but in everything with thanksgiving, we're just going to keep trusting him. And it's been true, like the peace of God that passes on all understanding guards our hearts. So that doesn't mean we don't have tears. That doesn't mean we know everything that's going on. But we have definitely sensed, and we're really spoiled to have a loving Christian community. You guys have been amazing neighbors and have loved on us in many ways. And to have a whole church praying, we literally feel carried along. And like right now, she feels good. And so we're just going to keep trusting the Lord step by step. And as she says, it's a win-win. Like, it's a win to stay, it's a win to go. But we're praying constantly for a miraculous intervention of the Lord.
Yeah. I just, that, yeah, nobody gets out alive. We don't know what this, when our time is up. We all, we say these things, but then when we're presented with, well, time might be up really soon, how do we respond, and how do we, because our response, right, our emotional response can determine, the outcome, or add to, how the outcome is, how the time, the duration, the peacefulness of it. And so, yeah, it's awesome to have community and to have the foundation you guys have. So, yeah, it's an inspiration for all of us. So, all right, I want to go one more question. This is for all my backslider friends, including myself. When I backslide, we hear the terminology, get right with God. So if I came to you and I said, Pastor, I backslid, I screwed up, did some really stupid stuff, how hard is it for me to get right with God? What would you say?
I would say, in one sense, you're a prayer away. Like, it's just, God says, call unto me, I will answer. So to be able to just be open and honest about where I am, what I've done, that's all God wants. Like, come. That first and foremost, like, come to me, all you who are weary, heavy laden, I will give you rest. So that would be number one. Can we be open and honest and cry out for help? But then where I think a lot of people stop is then like, listen to what Hebrews 3 says. Take care, brothers, lest there be in any of you an evil heart of unbelief, leading you to fall away from the living God, but exhort one another every day, as long as it is called today, that none of you may be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. For we have come to share in Christ if indeed we hold our original confidence firm to the end. So that, I think about that a lot. Like, it's one thing to cry out, ask forgiveness. God, swallows us up with his grace. But then it says here we need daily exhortation so that we're not deceived by the deceitfulness of sin. So then part of continuing on and finishing well is getting into community so that we have people who are speaking truth into us, exhorting us. And for me, some of those people are dead people, like reading really good stuff and listening to really good stuff and being close enough to a community that knows you. Because sin, as this passage highlights, is deceitful. And we will buy the lie if we're not in community under words of encouragement.
Yep. Yeah, sinners can encourage sinners, of which we all are.
Yeah.
So, yeah, awesome. Hey, Pastor, I really appreciate your time today. I was able to just feel so blessed to be able to corral you with your busy schedule between family, ministry. Oh, my goodness, I can't keep up. But anyway, thanks so much. That's a wrap. I hope everyone enjoyed today's episode and you got some takeaways that you can use. More information on Pastor Peter Hubbard and North Hills Church will be in the notes. Please share this with your friends. And don't forget all my stuff at russelljonespeaks.com. If you're a parent or grandparent or mentor to a 10 to 13-year-old, check out our 60-day transformational interactive video series, Top Secrets of Success for Kids and Parents. It's amazing. It will equip and encourage parents and kids. Yes, topsecretsofsuccess.com. Get on our email list, jump on a call with me, and in the words of the inimitable Hulk Hogan, say your prayers, take your vitamins, and you'll never go wrong. Then you can all go and make it a great day. Bye for now.